Hulkbuster's making a resurgence in our group.
My buddy Craig played a game as Hulkbuster on Hammers, and I was playing like 7 wide X Force, and he was so upset. He's just like, "This is why I don't play wide." That was the start of our going wide is just OP conversation because he was so upset, and he's a really good player. He's like played war games for longer than I have.
Okie dokie. Let's get this going.
All right.
All right. Hitting the record button. Where's it at again? Oh, yeah.
Recording in progress.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Maximum effort.
In this war, there's no surrender.
He's out of line, but he's right. Who the hell is Bucky?
You don't like a fair fight.
I think you're wrong. Which part? All of it.
Think you're the only superhero in the world?
Touché.
All right, we are the Rogue Agents, and you are the listener, and we're going to get right into this because we're falling behind. Thank you guys for stopping by, and let's go ahead and jump right into it as I push buttons because I'm professional and prepared. All right, so we got quite a few announcements actually to hit and get going with, and let's go ahead and start with the big one. People kept asking, and we decided to go ahead and do it and launch a Patreon. So if you would like to become a Patreon for the Rogue Agents, we got some pretty cool swag going on with it that you could check out within the different tiers. I don't really want to. Do you guys want to break it down real quick, or do you want to? Yeah, let's just break it down. Look at the hype going. So basically, tier 1, basic supporter. You go ahead and get like what do we call it? The Crucible. You get an entry into the Crucible, where essentially we're going to every quarter do a drawing where whoever's entered into the Crucible gets drawn, and they do Challenge of the Week against somebody else who got picked for Challenge of the Week. And then we're going to do a streamed game where we're commentating the game. You don't have to play the game if you don't want to. Somebody else can play the game, or you can pass it off to somebody else. It's up to you. But that's kind of how it goes. You can do the challenge still if you want. And then tier 2, you get, what was it, 3 entries? Yeah, more entries into the Crucible, and a random drawing again for a randomly selected gift, I guess you could say.
Some gifts. Got some gifts we're working on.
Yeah, I guess we won't go into the gifts too much because that'll be a more fun surprise. And then tier 3 gets you even more entries into the Crucible. So it'll be 5 entries for tier 3, and you also get a quarterly select exclusive tokens and a t-shirt. Yeah, that's what we decided on, was t-shirt. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, so. But if you want to check it out, the link is in the Discord. It'll also be in the show notes. The link on Discord will be under server rules. I'll just put it there because it's easy to find. So if you are interested, it's there. We could also talk about real quick the Accountability Club launched over the last week. You can find out how to sign up through that under server rules as well over at the Discord. And Accountability Club is a super cool thing that Sam had the idea to do, that he got from something else he used to do, because I'm sure somebody else had
stolen, just blatantly plagiarized from another group.
Absolutely.
But the name was changed.
We talked about it last week, but do you want to just do a quick synopsis of Accountability Group again real quick?
Sure. The Accountability Club is a monthly painting challenge where you're going to give yourself a painting goal or a hobby goal. You're going to paint it to your level of standards, whether you're trying to push yourself or just get some slap chop on a model and get it out there on the table. And then what happens is if you don't succeed in your goal, right, the goal that you set and the goal that you decided exactly to what level you were going to paint this thing to, you're going to get shamed, sometimes publicly, sometimes in the Discord. Depends on how long the list is and how much time we've got. And at some point, there may be a fantastic gift that you will really regret not having.
I am super looking forward to getting that thing designed and put out.
Yeah.
When people see pictures, I'd be like, man, I should have done this. Anyways, I should have followed through with my goals that I set 3 months ago. All right. Other announcements for those who haven't seen it yet. Black Swan's card is out there floating around. She's super hype, but we're not going to go into her card or anything like that because everybody else does that, and that's boring to hear the same thing over and over again. But Black Swan's super cool and super sick
super
model.
Cool. You'll get a hot take from like 14 other places. So
yeah,
have fun.
That's true.
All right. So let's go ahead. Do you guys have any other announcements you want to make? Any tournaments you want to shout out or anything else you want to cover?
I got a tournament in Greenville, South Carolina, July 23rd. It is not anything special. It's just a regular old Crisis Protocol tournament. It's not an invitational or anything, nothing extra there. Just going to be some fun stuff. We do special tokens for our tournaments in Greenville. So the only way you can get these tokens at this point is by coming to one of our events. So we do. We're going to have a good selection of tokens for this next one.
Cool. All right. Hyper?
No, I don't think so.
All right.
I don't think I have anything in particular that's happening in my area. Have fun, everyone, at the Realm this weekend. I'll try and make the next gen tournament next weekend, but we'll see if that happens.
Cool. Let's go ahead and jump into the main topic. And as you could tell from the episode title, we're going to be talking about meta. I guess I'll pass it over to Sam because you're the one that brought this up and want to talk about it. Let's go ahead and have Sam define what is meta. Not like what is the current meta, but like what is the definition of meta.
I think that the best definition that I can give off the top of my head is that a meta is something, it's kind of a collective experience where the players of a certain game all come together, and just by sheer brute force and volume, we kind of come to a conclusion of what are currently some of the quote unquote best pieces and what the best ways to get around those pieces can be. And that is how I think a meta really starts to originally kind of form. And once a meta kind of solidifies like that, it turns into a constantly evolving, constantly morphing and changing thing. So that's my description of a meta.
As Sure Thing said in the Twitch chat, meta used to be Facebook. That is true as well. Even though it still says Facebook on the app, like have they actually officially gone? I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Let's stay on track for once. Anyways, yeah, like what Sam said, it's basically just like the commonality description of the current game state. I think is the best way to say it in like 5 words or 6, whatever that was. Yeah, we
grind off all the jagged edges and we're left with just some smooth brain gloriousness.
Oh, it's fine. So I guess I think one of the coolest things about Marvel that I want to hit on before we go too deep into this is, unlike other games, you have so many releases going on that the meta is literally changing from month to month, except for the last 2 months where we hadn't had anything. But the meta shifts so much within MCP because of how many releases we get. And I think that's really cool dynamic that we get with this game is you're not going to have like a stale meta for 6 months. You're not going to be stuck in like this, I don't know, like dead zone where it's like, man, I'm so tired of seeing this over and over and over and over again. Like the game is actually really good at almost not being able to develop a true meta because something will come out and then like it's not, I guess, proven or shown itself until like 6 months later, which I think is super interesting with this game, unlike other games where it's like, it's coming out like months in advance and then it's gonna be around for months before the next new thing. So you're able to like establish a meta. Like look at Magic runs in a set and the cards before pretty much all the cards coming out like probably 2 to 3 weeks in advance, and people are able to shape the meta before it actually releases, and then it's there for 6 to 8 months. I think is what like the release cycle is. I don't pay attention to Magic that much anymore, but
I think it's like every 3 or 4 months is when the new set comes out.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly, and like the standard cycle is like three sets, and then another 3 sets, and then 1 set of 3 rotates out, and the next ones.
And then Sure Thing in Twitch over here says the fact that new characters don't just get added to a team like they would in 40K, or you could also look at War Machine or Malifaux or any game really. It means that every new character impacts meta so differently because you could literally take any character and put it into whoever you want to. So it's like it's just an interesting thing to look at when you're discussing like meta talk. Is like the meta is constantly changing, and it could literally change overnight in the middle of a release cycle, just because of the fact that somebody like, oh wow, whoever thought of running Hulk and X-Men currently? like
who could have done that?
but it's just like it's crazy to me that like you're so used to like miniatures games where it's like you end up in a stale meta where you just keep running into the same stuff, and next thing you know, your whole entire group is playing the same thing because it is meta, or you start doing the counter meta picks and then all this stuff. And like the worst thing that we get typically is when we're locked into the meta with something like the TTS League, where you're playing the same meta over a period of a month and a half to 2 months, versus playing at the store where it's like 1 week you could see this is meta, and then the very next week you plan for that and you're completely screwed over because it's not anymore. I just think it's cool. I think it's one of the coolest things about this game is it's just an ever constantly changing meta. And I think Sure Thing probably put out the biggest point of it. It's not just the release schedule, it's the fact that every character can go with everything. So now that I've been long-winded and talked a bunch about the same thing for about 3 minutes, Hyper, is there anything you want to add before we get a deep dive into meta?
No, I think my thoughts on meta, it's kind of similar to what y'all have been saying. It's just, I think metas go through phases. Like people think certain things are OP or are meta or whatever, and they'll kind of shove them into lists. And that makes them meta because predestination, right? Like you've decided that it's meta, so it's going to be meta. Right. I mean, it's like, that's my biggest thought on it is I think like we as the players have more control over the meta than we think. Like you really don't have to play anything.
Yeah, play what you want, right? Like that's, so the only thing that I would add to the conversation on like how the metas develop, like to this point in the conversation, is sometimes older characters come back to the forefront. Sometimes they get revitalized with a card or two, like with a new release. Sometimes it's because an old character actually has a really good game into a new character. So now I want to pull this guy out off the shelf and bring him back because he does so well against somebody who's brand new. That was kind of like the Dormammu into Fury experience for me. I was like, all right, like let's see what happens here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess we could look at it real quick and evaluate where MCP is at right now. And what would you guys say is the current state of MCP this 18th day of May of 2022? Gotta put a date on that, otherwise somebody will be listening to this in like a month and be like, "What are you guys talking about? You're high. Like this is not good."
Hey, run that question by me one more time because I'm a little confused.
I think the three of us are going to have three different answers to this. I think that like even though we've got a global community like playing on TTS like from all around the world, I think that the three of us are all in different metas. So if we were to all talk about like our local meta, I bet they're all different, because that's another thing, right? Is that it's not just like this is what's good in the game, this is what content creators say I should play. It's also like I want to play with this character, and turns out like sort of like 4 other dudes in my group. So now we've got all of this to deal with. Now we've got a completely different meta. Like right now, I've got a meta that's very, very full of X-Men and Hulk. Our social contract completely broke down. Everybody wants to play X-Men and Hulk.
So I think the thing about that though is going into the counter of people being afraid of like voodoo and the single extracts and CS, because I would say that was the previous meta was CS, non-pay to flips, and single extracts. And like Sure Thing's asking pretty much this exact question is what caused Black Cat and voodoo to become meta, and that's things like I think content creators are probably the biggest pushers of developing a meta, because we start saying things like, you don't like playing against Sam, well, Voodoo and Black Cat and playing single extracts are going to hurt Sam so much. And then that people hear all this, and you end up getting thousands of people agreeing with it, and you start pushing this agenda almost, which I think is something we try to avoid with our concept. At least I hope we avoid it. I think we do a pretty good job of not going down that rabbit hole too much. But you look at like why Black Cat and Voodoo became so meta is because of trying to counter the previous state of like Black Order and all that. So you go single extracts. Black Cat and Voodoo are good at stopping it. It keeps Black Order from running away with single extracts, makes Black Order go down a peg, makes Sam go down a peg, and makes if you're taking Black Cat Voodoo almost necessary because everybody's doing it. Then you have the flip side of during that time, CS people were like, okay, well, I want to play these non-pay to flips, and then CS starts taking over because CS can easily fit into Voodoo or Black Hat, and they start running the single extract game with non-pay to flips, and they start dominating or start doing a good job. I wouldn't say CS really dominated as much as the Black Hat and Voodoo did. But then when you look at that is people start seeing this and they get tired of it. Like, well, how do I beat this? And that's how you get your meta shift going into grunts and fury and Shadowlands Daredevil and his grunts, and people leaning more towards multi extracts and pay to flips, because now they're stopping CS with pay to flips and they are running multi extracts, which I think is what created what you have going on, Sam, with X-Men, because X-Men are amazing at pay to flips and they're amazing at multi extracts. So in all reality, I think that is, in my opinion, that's where the current meta is pay to flips and multi extracts.
I think that's a good read. So the thing about metas for me is that once a meta is established, if you're catering to that meta, you're actually falling behind, right? Because what happens, in my opinion, is that metas immediately start to go into counter metas, right? And it's not just me, it's not, just anybody. I see a bunch of X-Men and Hulk. I'm not looking to how do I compete with X-Men and Hulk? I want to figure out what beats X-Men and Hulk. And then you can start going way down the rabbit hole, right? Because then what's the next level? What beats X-Men and Hulk? And so you can start to kind of try to develop an idea of where you think a meta is going. And so I think that right now, if you're looking at the 14, 15, and 16 threat crises, I think that that's something that you need to be paying attention to for your roster. Even if you're not going to bring all of those, I think you want to make sure that you've got that low threat game built into your roster, because that's going to keep some of the big boys off the table. And so we might be in a flip secure multi-extract meta, but we're also in a big boy meta. And the big boys struggle on a lot of those flip secures and extracts, but they can you can deploy them and they have less predators in the water at these lower threats. If you can fit a big boy into a roster that's at a very low threat level, then you've got some pretty interesting game into a roster that's trying to run wider to handle multi-extracts and flip secures. So it's an interesting dichotomy, if you will, between these two different competing frameworks in this game, right? Because there's a lot of competing frameworks in Crisis Protocol. It's one of the things I love about this game.
Hyper?
Yeah, I agree. If you can fit in those big boys at low threat, it feels really good. I don't know, like meta shift. X-Men are fabulous. They're like counter punching right now because everyone's been super high on CS for a while now. And I think CS are ridiculous right now with the advent of Daredevil. I think they have a very versatile mono affiliation roster because they're very different leaders and they're wide roster. But X-Men are great at that counterpunch because they bring like the opposite of what they want to do on either side. Pay to flips are bad for both Daredevil and for Kingpin because you don't have to sit on the point anymore. You can just move on and grab it and then move away.
Right.
That's what I got there.
Fair enough. I think I've been like Sam and we sat down for like, I don't know, like 5 hours the other night.
It keeps getting to be more. I think it was like 2.5 in all honesty, but they were late night hours. So, I paid the price the next day.
Yeah. And we started with like looking at like my current list, and he brought up this 14, 15, 16 idea to me. And then we ended up going down like Shield and X-Force and why they don't fit this little I guess shell, I guess you could say is a good word for it. And
the palette cleanse. We had to cleanse your palette to get some spider foes and some shield out of your system.
Well, we came to the realization of why. I think we came to the true reasoning of why I always go to X-Force, and it's really just because of mutants. Like it's that special spot for me, and I just can't get away from it. So it's not just X-Force, it's mutants. So we're currently looking at the X-Forcemen, which led to X-Forcemen running Hulk.
I do like X-Forcemen. Just the name is so funny.
I need to get it like copyrighted and all that. No X-Forcemen. I don't know if, but anyways, I love it. Love the name of the team. I come up with like the weird names. Like when I was running X-Force, I was calling it X-Foes, and I just find the little silly themes like that. Anyways, get me off topic way too easy. But I think X-Men actually has a really good. We've gone completely away from defining meta to like just. Anyways,
talking about X-Men. I wonder how that happened. Who am I talking with today?
You're right. just change it from the Rogue Agents to the X-Men. I'm on here, X-Forcemen all the way. Anyways, trying to get back on track. I do think X-Men actually has a really, 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 really good spot going forward. Especially if we're looking at this 14, 15, 16, and then going into you develop your list. Like during what I was getting through with a thought experiment of like 14, 15, 16, and then building off of that. Is you're not really building your roster off of the meta or the potential meta or the previous meta. You're building it based off of these trouble points for everybody. You're not trying to create a meta. You're not doing like that. I wouldn't even call it, like I said, I wouldn't even call it counter meta. You're literally doing something that's not what people normally look at.
You're picking crises that basically no one wants to play on.
I think that's like, is that not the definition of counterpunching?
I think that's counterpunching, yes.
But I wouldn't call it counter meta though, is the thing though, because it's not necessarily, you're not picking those crises because they're counter meta. They're not going against what is happening. You know what I mean?
I mean, you're picking them because other people are bad at them.
Yeah. But that's just generally speaking, like people are bad at these. But I wouldn't say that Sword and Gamma and Cosmic are like counter meta against pay to flips.
Yeah, I guess like your style of choosing it is different, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you're thinking about, you're innovating. How about that?
Yeah, you're being innovative. Innovation's key. But like I think the thought experiment gets you away from trying to plan for the meta in your roster and potentially making a misstep for like, hey, I want to take this, like how Sam was talking about, like you're not planning for the meta because at that point you're already a step behind. You're just making something completely unrelated to what the meta is currently at. You're just ensuring your list is solid all around by planning your roster around those 14, 15, 16 crises. I think that's probably a very interesting thing to look at it, to where you're not taking the true meta considerations into your list until after you've established your baselines. Does that make sense?
I track with that.
Okay.
But I mean, it's like half my idea or something. So...
it was your idea. You brought it to me and I ran with it.
I mean, that's what I look at. I think the Guardians are really strong on those. And I think that X-Men are uniquely positioned right now because of the storm cover and just a little bit of extra mobility that they have from the hop, that you can, then you throw a Hulk in there. Like, so like Guardians want to run a Hulk. X-Men can run a Hulk. They can both do it at 14. They can both bring pretty nasty rosters at 14. They're very different rosters. The Guardians are going to have some extra punch at range, but it's going to go into cover on the X-Men side, which is, kind of interesting. If you're re-rolling 2 dice with wing in it, you statistically should get about half of those back as hits. So, all right. So I re-roll 2, and then I'm just going to automatically get 1 for cover. So if you roll average and I didn't max out on my blocks already, I'm going to go ahead and block something.
Yeah.
So I think that they're in an interesting position, button heads, in this kind of exercise for what you're looking at with these crises. But these crises include Sword.
The X-Men Hulk is just like, that's when I was playing X-Men a lot. I did have trouble with like Sword and Mutant Madmen just because you're not getting the cover as often as I would like, because you're always sitting in the middle. Mm-hmm. But Hulk, like, he likes cover, but he doesn't need cover per se until a little later on. I had a game against GD Nerd recently where I just completely ignored Sword and I won. It's not unignorable, but it's definitely a crisis that commands your attention.
Yeah. Like I said, I think you got 3 turns to solve Sword, and then to solve that.
I think it's a very good way of thinking about it. 3 rounds to figure out like what's going to happen with the scoring.
Yeah. That goes back to, when Ulysses won his TTS season, that was something that we had talked about when he went with his YOLO 2-man squad. Now that was all him. I was way too chicken shit to run that at the time. I've had some fun with it since, but like that's a crazy 2-man squad that it takes a lot of chutzpah to put on the table. But
that's the only 2-man squad. You really like if I don't think there's any other 2-man squad that's even like maybe sort of possibly kind of viable.
No, and now you play a point down with it too. So I
don't, he's a madman.
Yeah,
he's my fellow Black Order king. One of them.
Got another thing from Sure Thing. Rock, paper, scissors is basically a meta. People start taking scissors to beat their buddy. He always goes paper. It's always a circle, and as more stuff comes out, the idea of teching for any one thing seems like a fool's errand. I think that's kind of what like Sam was getting at when we were going over these rosters and bringing this idea to me of like, look at it this way. And it kind of just like frees yourself, I guess you could say. It gets you out of like this tunnel vision when you're creating a roster that I think is actually good. And I think it should be looked at more that way instead of, okay, well, I need to take pay to flips. So what goes good on the pay to flips? Because like how Sure Thing's saying here, instead of teching for any one thing, especially in this game that's constantly changing, you're teching for just like the low threats. Like, and if you could do that and do it successfully and be good at it, then like meta almost doesn't matter when it comes down to it.
If you're ready for the low threats, it's almost always easier to add or upgrade than it is to take away or downgrade, right? So if you've got a plan that's locked in at 14, 15, 16, it's easy to add one more model to that. It's easy to, upgrade your honey badger to rogue, right? Like it's way easier to go up than it is to go down, because when you go down, you're taking things out of your toolkit. And if you're not prepared to, play with a screwdriver and a nail, then, you're like, oh crap, I guess I need the hammer and the nail. How do I make this work?
Well, especially because if you look at like the pay to flips, I think the fastest pay to flip, like other than sword, of course, is 17 meteors.
That meteors?
Oh, I guess yeah. Because 16 is Fisk and Cosmic, 15 is Gamma and Herb. So yeah, meteors is the first 17.
Yeah, so you're adding a 3. You're adding a 3 to a 4 or 5 wide roster at that point.
Done. So it's like, if you look at that, and if people are looking at this, most people are basically having their baseline roster at 17, where you're making your baseline roster at 14. And that just to kind of, I guess, reinforce Sam's point, is if you're building at 14, you're just being able to go up to where people are baseline. Your baseline's immediately better. Like I think it's a really interesting way to look at it. And I think this relates to the whole meta talk, because it's talking about roster creation and basically almost pulling back the curtain of meta. Because maybe in this game, the definition of a meta is almost non-existent because of how fast it changes and how easily it can change. What do you think about that?
One of my favorite fake tweets of all time was it was not Hammer. It was Rock tweeting saying, "Paper is OP, scissors is okay." It's the same kind of thing. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Basically, everyone's always going to like believe that whatever they're playing, they're not going to say like, oh yeah, I'm playing like broken stuff, but they're also not going to say that like, like what I'm playing is like this uncounterable nonsense. If someone's playing the OP stuff, unless they're like, I don't know, more self-aware than 90% of gamers, they're not going to admit that it's OP.
99.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear that what they play is the best, and nobody wants to hear that their favorite character is trash, right? And those are like two opposite ends of the MCP spectrum, like right there. Like,
like I still play Wolverine and I get success out of him, but I know he's not optimal. But yeah, like that's the reality situation. And that's why like when people talk about like so-and-so character being like, the OP, like the top 5 character in the game, I'm like, that's an unhealthy way to think about this.
Yeah.
Because something is always going to be in the top 5. Like you can maybe stretch that out to like top 6 or top 7, but like realistically, there's always going to be something that's like a teensy bit better than anything else. And the curve in Crisis Protocol is really tight. I've gotten my ass kicked by people running Amazing Spider-Man leadership and had a blast while it happens, like stuff that's like, if this is like, and I don't want to go all conspiracy theory, but stop listening to podcasters. I swear to God. Like, just stop listening to people. Just play what you want to play and make it work. Innovation is key, yada, yada, yada.
It's great advertisement,
But we're a live show. We're not a podcast. We're a live show.
It's true. Listen to us because we're different.
We're taking 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 a cue from Wait Did I Roll a Wild Rope vlog. Words. I can't words today. Jesus.
I'm mute.
What?
I don't know what happened there.
Did something happen? I'm gonna be right back.
That's what happened. You cut yourself off.
Oh no, I think I scooted my chair and it made a weird noise.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I just heard I'm a bee, and I was like, oh, you what? This is the best part about me not editing any of this is people can get half of a live experience because they're not here to experience it with us. But
so great. We miss you when you're not here, everyone.
Come join us. Come join us on Twitch. It's so much more fun here. Sure Thing's providing a lot of words of wisdom, and he's part of the episode as much as we are now.
Right? You are the listener.
You are the listener, and we are the rogue agents. I like that so much. I remembered it this time, and I started it open and close it with us. All right. Anyways, I'm still not gonna edit any of this out because I'm too lazy. And
that's not. No, it's pure. It's purity. It's purity.
People like the raw footage or the raw audio.
I think so.
It's a good laugh, and then they sit here and listen to this. Like, let me fast forward 15 seconds.
No. So I mean, I tend to be a little bit of a butterfly when it comes to minis games. Like every minis game, every game I've played, I play something and I don't play it long enough. I always get a little sidetracked. I want to like go in a different direction, or I find out that what I'm playing is the best thing, or I get told that what I'm playing is the best thing by a lot of people, and I lose interest in playing it and want to do something else. Or, I do really well with it or really bad with it. And then I'm just like, I'm going to move on. I want to, explore some greener pastures. So that's, I am always a little envious of the people that can just focus on a single affiliation or a core of characters and just hit that all the time. And that's all they do. And, that's a ride of its own, right? Because sometimes those things are good and sometimes those things don't quite fit. So to bring this all back around, right? So that might be, we might not have much of a quote unquote meta for this game, but there are definitely cycles, right? I think that the fear of what's good can be a lot worse than the actuality of playing against that thing, right? So like CS, I think, is a prime example of this, especially Kingpin CS, because when Scoundrels got released, I think the collective content world for Crisis Protocol kind of lost their brains because it was like CS is busted on Scoundrels. Nobody can beat CS. Nobody can compete with them. It's 5 points. They're going to get like 4 of them every single time. And, maybe that's the case in some games. Maybe that's the case for some people's experience, but it's not. It's we figure out how to beat things together. We figure out how to beat things ourselves. We figure out how to beat things in small groups and large groups. So I think that whenever there's a boogeyman, the best thing we can do is, point at it.
I'm here to stay. Sorry.
Welcome back.
I'm interrupting.
But I love, well, I love in this game. So like skill level is a real thing in this game, right? So we were talking about how the curve is so, compact, right? So I think that player skill has a lot to do with a lot of things, and these dice are swingy, right? So those two factors can do a whole lot. So like, I love when I see like the Facebook post that's like, Ebony Maw is unbeatable.
Barn Cat out here killing people.
What do you do against Ebony Maw? He's the most powerful piece in this game. And there are players that are just like, chuckling under their breath. There are people who are like, taking on like a social justice warrior against it. Be like, what are you talking about? Ebony Maw's terrible. He was bad. And now he's even, he's okay now. So I think that the fact that we can say those things, the fact that people are saying those things, I think it's good, right? Even though it doesn't necessarily always look good at that first glance, right? Because when somebody's having a bad experience with the game, you're like, oh, I feel bad for you. But also, what if we can all come together and learn how to beat Ebony Maw for so-and-so? Or we can, figure out that CS isn't unbeatable on Scoundrels.
Yeah, it's an issue with oh man, that Scoundrels conversation. I want to bike that so hard. I've never lost a game to CS on Scoundrels, because I play killer monster people, and also sometimes Avengers who just throw you off all the points. What am I talking about? I wish that was more of a facet of the internet instead of it just being echo chambers where people are like, oh, so and so is bad or so and so is good, and everyone just like either nods or disagrees. We need to get back to the social contract of being able to like argue with each other without like getting mad. And that's why I love our Discord, because we have like actual conversations. We have all our little dojos, little shameless plug here going on accidentally. But It's the ability for folks to just like talk to each other and like actually learn things. Speaking of Barncat, the other day I told him about FaceMe and how it like is a really good text piece sometimes, and he tried it out and had great success. I was like, oh, cool. I helped a friend of mine out and figure some things going on. I also just like, again, shout outs to Barncat for like being so committed to the bit of Space Maw that people are actually paying attention to him now.
You could say that people are warming to Space Maw. We're thawing him out.
So bad.
Okay. All right, so how do we get Wolverine? How do we get Wolverine and Colossus thought out then?
Oh, we give him a space gem.
Oh.
Oh man, Wolverine with a space gem would be pretty sick.
Yeah, he might be able to charge like sometime in the middle of the game.
But then you're paying 5 threat for Wolverine.
Oh man, I don't want to talk about it. What was our point? What were we trying to talk about besides Ebony Maw? People like, having conversations about characters is my favorite thing in this game. Like, not because this is something I've been seeing more of too, is like folks, instead of being like, oh, Thanos is OP, people are finally starting to be like, no, you just, blind obsession rapid fire, or like you do this and this, you Helios. People are finally starting to be like, there are ways to defeat this. And I want to believe in my heart of hearts that we had something to do with that. Just like opening the conversation up to not just be like character bashing. Voodoo as well. Like Voodoo, 4-4-6 is great, but defensive dice are 3 out of 8 successes. Yeah. I blanked out on 4 defense more times than I can count. You just hit them. Like, yeah, if you don't 1-round them, you're in for a bad time. But if you didn't 1-round them, you probably put him at like 5, and then you can kill him really easily with someone else, and then hopefully destroy him the next turn. He's actually off the table. And yes, maybe they had a great early game, but now they're out their 4 threat, and they're going to be on their back foot.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think this is a good place to intermission real quick and move on to the second Zoom.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. Be right back. We all here? Okay, we're here.
We're here.
Okay, hit the record on this.
Recording in progress.
And go back to this. Oh, I lost it. There it is. Okay. All right, we are back. I think the one good thing about the Zoom calls, though, with like the whole breaks in here, is we're able to get reset when we go so far off the thing.
Yeah, have a moment for us to remember what we're supposed to be talking about.
The meta.
Granted, I will shout out the Patreon one more time, just because people have been complaining about us using Zoom and doing it this way.
If you want more rambles,
I guess maybe if you have a disagreement, you want us to keep using Zoom to get us back on track, then say something. But yeah, I will say, because I missed it earlier, with the whole Patreon funds, we completely plan to use all the funds for Patreon to go back into the show with getting things to not have to have these interruptions, and also to fund the cool giveaways and gifts that we'll be doing for the tiers. So that's I forgot to hit on that earlier, that all Patreon funds are being like put right back into the show and to you guys, the listeners. That's your title.
Community building.
Exactly. All right. So as we are on 0.2 out of 20 for I guess we kind of have been hitting on this, so about like what goes into a meta. I think like this whole entire conversation over the past little while pretty much has been what goes into a meta is almost that exact conversation of the thought process of everything. What do you guys think?
A lot, yeah. What goes into a meta? A lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the conversation, we have to kind of split it here if we're talking about local metas or like TTS meta.
Agreed. I would say, because I think there's a podcast called Infamous that I listen to when I get the chance to. They hit on this a lot, actually, how there is a strong distinction between a TTS meta and a local meta. TTS meta is a huge worldwide groupthink versus your local meta is a 5 to 20 person groupthink.
Yeah. I got to beat Tim this week.
Yeah, like instead of, I think TTS falls into the groupthink way too easily because of 1, content creators, 2, discords, 3, the TTS leagues. Like all these things really shape what the TTS meta looks like, which is something I think people need to be aware of as well. And I'm glad Hyper brought this up, because a lot of the people that are on TTS go to like the major conventions, and if you're going to a major convention, it's something that you probably should be paying attention to, because I wouldn't be surprised if your local meta and convention meta are different. And I think convention metas are going to be more similar to the TTS meta. What do you guys think about that one?
A friend of mine, actually, when I was at LVO, Kevin was talking about, and he mentioned this like after the whole event. He felt that table versus TTS meta were completely different. And I'll admit that I was teched for things that didn't show up. Like there were far less web warriors and such. But the way I build lists these days is I try and tech for everything. So I was still ready for just about everything. There was just less of what I expected there to be. And like Criminal Syndicate, I think got completely blown out. I think there was like 1 player playing CS in Top Cut. So yeah, there's certainly a difference. But if you're not teching for your local stuff and you're bringing like your competitive list to an event, I think you're going to do just fine. It's just like having an ear to the ground on both sides, like knowing what your friends play so you can like have fun games with them. Not saying that they shouldn't be competitive, but like so you can just have fun at your local shop when you're playing with your buddies. And then also like having an ear to the ground on TTS and knowing like what is quote unquote meta, what everyone's bringing, what you need to be ready for. I think there's a sweet spot in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think a lot of the global, like a lot of the TTS meta is about not getting hard countered by anything. You're just like, okay, I want to bring this, and this. What's my worst matchup? Oh, wow, that's unwinnable. Okay, we're back to the drawing board. Like I think that a lot of what you're doing there is about just trying to make sure that you're prepared for everything, like you said, and making sure that you don't have any just outstanding hard counters out there. Like, all right, if I play against this, is it a punt? I hope not. So for me, there are three moments in the TTS seasons that I love, and they are every roster lock. Because I feel like the preseason roster and roster lock is where like everyone is just trying to like to some extent like out jank each other, right? Like some people are like, oh, I know that this is the best, or I think that this is the best, so this is what I want to run. And other people are like, all right, I think that that's the best, but it's not what I want to do. I want to try to do this. And then you've got other people that are just trying to like play what they know or play what they love. And that's like the first roster lock. And then the mid-season roster lock is like what worked, what didn't, or am I just like going back to the drawing board and scrapping it and starting over? And then the same thing happens again at the cut. So I think the best rosters and the players with the best chances are the ones that basically stick with the same thing through the whole season. And then they get to the cut and they've got a very refined, beautiful, fine wine of a roster. Congratulations, Morgan. Like that was a great run in the TTS season, and your roster is a thing of beauty. So
he's like a perfect example of what you're talking about, though, because he started with Guardians and he finished with Guardians, and there's very, very, very few. I don't really remember. I don't have it in front of me, and I didn't like look at it. If I remember correctly, the last time I looked was very, very few changes in his roster across the whole entire
one or two at each level. Just swapping out something that didn't work for something that he thought would.
Which is something to think about. Is like if you go back and you like are interested in looking at TTS rosters, like I would say if you go through and you look at the end cuts version of rosters, you're probably doing yourself a disservice by that. What you should be doing is looking at the end cuts rosters and look at that person's roster. Like, well, did they play this roster from the midpoint and the beginning? Because at that point, it's a refined roster versus they shifted over to something else, and it's
Right.
halfly refined.
And
like to your point,
it's refined and teched, right? Because
Yeah.
if you get right down to it, right? So like that initial roster is like so innocent and pure. It's just like what you thought you wanted to play or what you thought was a good idea. And then the mid-season roster is a combination of like cutting the fluff out of your first half, and also like, you know, trying to somewhat tech for wherever you're at. Like if you're an X and 1, then you've got like the Wild West that you could get paired into, and you've also got the guys that are undefeated at that point, which you could get paired up into. So the X and 1 is a really weird place to be. You still have to tech for everything. If you're in like an undefeated bracket, then you're looking more at, all right, like I'm going to play, you know, this group of people pretty much from here until the end of this event. And then this season, I don't think was so bad. The last season under the old rules was absolutely insane, I think, for trying to like, you know, tech for the cut, right? So like in some ways, I think that the mid-season roster is almost the one to look at. If you want to see rosters, it's that mid-season roster is the good one.
Agreed. We got something from Full Metal in the chat saying it's easier to play anything on TTS, where real life you might be more prone to play characters you've painted or even actually own. I think this is very something that's like good to look at. Is real life you actually have to have the model, and not a lot of people just own every single model. I think it's more rare to own every single model than it is to not.
Yeah.
So it's a very good point to where that can shape what you're able to play and how that shapes the meta, because I can't just be like, I'm going to go play this, this, and this and see how it works at the store. So yeah, there is a very good point within that. I think it's interesting to think about is the in real life meta really, really, really promotes play what you love, because you're going to go buy what you love. You're not going to like that is,
and you have to look people in the eyes when you play them.
Yeah. So you don't, I mean, you don't care obviously for your anyways, but I think it's a very good point. I think it's actually something worth bringing up is I think the in real life meta, minus the people who are more oftenly playing on TTS than they are in real life, are going to play what they love and try to make that work. And people who play more on TTS than they do on in real life are probably going to be testing what they do it and then buying what's good or what they think is good, they perceive as good from their testing. Another one. Did this season feel more balanced and reliant on player skill than just taking the best tools? I think that's actually a very good question. I'm gonna throw Hyper on his back foot real quick while I think of my answer.
So just to clarify, do I think the people who won just had the best tools? Is that the question?
Did the season feel more balanced and reliant on player skill over just taking the best tools?
Oh, absolutely. There's always gonna be a factor of randomness in this game with like the dice being dice, and also like I'll harp on this forever, but random RNG extracts, like sometimes you get a lucky sword flip, or sometimes you get a really good like scroll or alien ship pull, or sometimes you just turn one fine senator on like the wrong side of the board for your opponent, and that can really throw a game out of whack. But nothing's unrecoverable. I think without all you've got, this season had some of the best opportunity for folks to really show their stuff and like just like have the opportunity to use all the tricks in their bag. And it really was who has like the best plan, not who has the best tools, but who has the best plan. That's what it was for me, at least in my experience.
I would say I think the way that the crisis change happened also really affected this, because before, like, that was part of your tools, is you really kitted your crises to like two to benefit you and one to screw over somebody else, was basically the common thought. And now it's like it's completely
three
different.
To screw over somebody else.
Yeah, like it's completely different. So it's like you're not really like stacking your toolbox, so to say, and you can't predict what you're going to be able to get. Like you really can't, as much as you could before. Anyways, like I guess you can still kind of like go for it, but as much like you're really a lot of the tools that you could like have agency on to affect the turn zero of the game are gone. And I think that's a huge thing too, which goes into promoting it's more balanced and reliant on that player skill. Like, yeah, I think that'd be my answer for that. Absolutely player skill.
This was a great season. I mean, I think that the rules changes were all highlighted, in this last season, and it was they were all positive. I think that if there's one kind of middling point is that we're still going to see a lot of cream rise to the top, and I think that something that's really easy to overlook in a meta discussion is what's missing, right? So in the last season under the old rules, the top 4 was all Sam spam, and this season we had, what was it, 2 Guardians and 2 Brotherhood that made that final 4. So I mean, obviously we're still somewhat stratified in what's in and what's out, but again, I think it's far more telling by what made it there by what's missing, right? So I'm not prepared to have that part of this conversation, and plus I don't think that talking about a prior meta really helps us do very much to prepare for the next one, mostly because of the release cycle and things like that. So I mean, we've got new stuff coming out. Let's just focus on what we think is good, what we like to play, what you think you need to be prepared for, and kind of move on. But yes, definitely player skill was more than just tools that were well above the rest.
Absolutely. Speaking of
that
cycle.
Oh, okay. Speaking of, if for all of you folks following along in the Discord, I'm about to drop a hot new meme in the chat.
Oh, geez.
Not in the chat, in our Discord. Okay. On the subject of Thanos, and then I'm not going to talk about this anymore.
Okay.
That's the wrong one. There we go.
I was looking at that like, I don't get this at all. All right. I guess I can do this. I guess I can do this real quick. Show stuff.
Oh, you're gonna put it on the stream? Let's go.
Is this how this works? I don't remember how to do this. Oh well, I can't. I wasn't prepared for this.
That's okay. If you're listening on the podcast, I'll pin this for you in our Discord so you can see it forever.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to talking about meta cycles real quick. Which is another thing I guess we've kind of been just hinting at and talking about, but
yeah,
Sam,
talk around it.
What do you want to hit on for meta cycles?
I think that my last little summary was kind of what I see as a meta cycle, right? So metas resolve in a few different ways, in my opinion. One of them is if you have a big tournament season, kind of like Magic does, where Magic comes to an end of a cycle and now that meta is gone. I think that to some extent TTS seasons have a little bit of that energy to them, because by the time the next season starts, we're going to have hopefully at least 1 to 2 new releases. We might have more. In this case, we're going to have some new spoilers. I think that the old meta is gone, right? Long live the new meta. So right now, right? So the meta cycles, right? So what are our last meta cycles? We went from old rules to new rules. So that was one meta cycle, right? So that was the end of one thing, the beginning of a whole new one. And then we went from oh my God, CS is the sky is falling, into playing a flip secures and singleton extracts meta, right? You weren't necessarily running both of those things, but you were probably running one of them. And now I think that we're in the fantastic period where the meta is wide open, right? So we just kind of wrapped up this last TTS season, which was a wide versus tall challenge for the final, right? With Guardians versus 3 wide Brotherhood going into each other. And so we've got, a big boy meta and a wide meta that are competing for dominance. And I think that what we're going to see from here, right, is we're going to see the next evolution, which is probably something of a 4 and 5 wide meta that's probably trying to play at lower points values.
I think I don't think Guardians are going anywhere, but I agree with your thought process on the whole. I think we're going to see. I think Dizzard's new idea of running all the loads and having a team
that's awesome.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
Well, Sam's idea of running all the loads is a very intriguing concept, but I think if all you've got hadn't gotten banned, this roster would have been this season would have been 80% Sam.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think anything's going to change for Guardians in the next 5 minutes. So next
No, now Guardians are the thing to beat now, right?
Yeah,
so like,
next season Guardians are going to be everywhere. They're like, and for good reason. They're debatably the best affiliation in the game. Like, they're super easy to splash, or super easy to bring splashes, and their core is so small and so effective. They're just an incredibly good little squad. They can do a lot of things. So, yeah, I'm kind of down for a season of attrition games. If that's the big thing to beat, hey, I'm bringing the heat.
So Sir Sam says if metas change so quickly, it's just better to ignore them and just try to build a roster that works in most situations. And that's kind of what we're getting at with this whole look at the 14, 15, 16s. Because if you build your roster based off of 14, 15, 16, you are, for all intents and purposes, ignoring the meta and preparing your roster for every single threat value. Because if you can build 14, 15, 16, you can build 17, 18, 19, 20 for whatever scenario it is. So that's kind of like the quick summary of pretty much the first 30 minutes of the episode.
Buyer beware, but buyer beware from there, right? So like if everybody starts building for 14, 15, 16, then we have a 14, 15, 16 meta. So it doesn't always, like, you can because that's part of what metas are, right? They're shaving off the jagged edges, right? They're making everything get down to the nucleus of what is collectively succeeding across all of our rosters, across all of our experiences. And it's never going to be homogenous, thankfully, in this game, at least, like, knock on wood. It's not going to be homogenous in this game because we have so many releases, because there's so many moving pieces, because the dice are so swingy, because there is so much variation in, like, the available resources at this point. But buyer beware, right? So I wouldn't say that you want to go into 14, 15, and 16, and that's all you bring, right? So, like, what's the next evolution that we got to Dizzard, right? Like, so now it's like, all right, maybe Sword's not the answer, because golly, Sword is like the worst crisis in the game.
It's still fun at 17,
I think,
but
it's kind of rough at 14 for sure. It's also at 14, it's a pretty good hedge against Fury, even though, like, he's still extremely good at it. Just because, like, you have the minion to run around and kill shit while you're doing your flipping thing. But that's another thing. So next season, we're definitely going to see a whole lot of Guardians. We're also, if Fury is not the most picked character, I'll, like, eat a shoe or something.
I think you might want to, like, change that, because I think people are more turning their heels on Fury nowadays, and liking Daredevil more than Fury.
I don't understand that at all. But okay.
I see more people talking Daredevil than talking Fury.
I think Fury is a better splash than Daredevil. So I would be surprised if he wasn't, like, maybe not usurping Voodoo, but, like, in that same kind of Voodoo spot. How about this? Okay. Fury's going to be top 3 picked. I think that's, like, the most safe statement I can say. He's going to be in, like, when Xavier drops that article and it's like, here's what everyone picked for season 8. Fury's going to be on that list. He's going to be real high. People are going to have to take against him. In my test games, I've found that Fury he's so self-contained, whereas Daredevil kind of needs to have his leadership to really function. You can drop Fury anywhere and he's a monster.
I would disagree. I think because there's a long time before the next season starts still. And
that's like years in season time.
So I guess you have to have channel points for that. Never mind. I thought I'd try something cool, but I don't know how channel points work. But anyways, I tried that, but whatever. Anyways, I think Fury, I can see him being between 5 and 10. I don't think he'll be top 3, because I think there's enough time that people will figure out who actually wants to run Fury and who is wasting their time with Fury. Because I was forcing Fury into X-Force, thinking, like, oh, he's really great, he's a good killer, he fixes the extract problems. But I think that might actually be a mistake. I think he might actually not be good for X-Force, because you're losing the slot for this, where it only comes up, like, once every 5 games, where you're actually taking Fury.
You got a little wager on that one, Desmond?
We'll talk and decide.
Staying power. So
no. I gotta pressure you on the call. I gotta pressure you here and now. Fury top 3. You don't play X-Force for a month. You can do whatever you want on my end.
Oh, that's fine. Shoot, I don't know. You can't play Thanos.
That's the easy one.
That's not hard. You have to play X-Force for a month, which is easy for you.
Oh, dude, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great bet. All right, locked in.
Oh, fair enough. Who do we expect? Oh, let's save that one for when we do listener questions. Let's go ahead and move on to. Sam already answered that question too. I guess we're done with meta talk. Is there closing thoughts on what you want?
I want to talk a little more Fury. I want to talk a little more Fury. I want to talk about staying power. Right.
Okay.
I don't have a tremendous amount of reps into or with Fury. Right. I got a handful of each. I've had moderate experiences on both sides. I would say that in watching the TOing the event, I watched a Fury player get an herb score and just lose, right? Like he was up like 14-2 and just got tabled in the end of it. So obviously that's not going to happen every single time. But I think that there is we were talking about hares last week or the week before, right? Tortoise versus hare. I think that Fury's got a lot of hair capacity to him, but I don't know if he can get across the finish line. And I don't have enough reps to really like have my own opinion on that. So I know that Hyper Viper has said quite a lot about where he thinks that Fury is. And I know whether or not I'm bringing Fury in my tournament roster that I'm taking on Sunday, right? But I don't know if Fury has staying power. And I think that, kind of like what Dizzard said, I think that Daredevil as a piece, Daredevil himself, whether the grunts, are better or worse than the Fury grunts, I think that Daredevil's got more staying power. So,
okay.
Sell me this pen, Hyper Viper. What's going on with Fury?
So he's a double flip, I don't know, double-edged sword. That's the wrong phrase, but he has two really strong points in the game, in my opinion. The first point is turn one. If you have a priority or not, he's scoring you 2 extracts on the table. Like if you're taking him, most likely there are 2 extracts you can pick up, and he is going to get 2 of them. So his speed is insane. There's no other character in the entire game besides Corvus and Proxima, and that's 2 characters, or I guess the other grunt haver, Daredevil, who can grab 2 spiders at once, and he can.
Yeah.
So that turn one is very strong. And then later on in the game, whether or not he has power, his damage output is insane. So like, especially if you can boost it anyway, like be that rerolls or like dice boosting via cards or Baron Mordo or Thanos, his damage output is actually really, really strong. So like, I've had games where my opponent's playing Shadowlands, right? And their grunts kill my Iron Fist or something crazy. Then I'll activate my Fury and my grunts will kill their Doctor Strange or something. Like 4 dice with a reroll is actually kind of nuts. It's basically 5 dice.
Yeah.
It's probably a little bit better than 5 dice in my opinion. I don't know, like mathematically probably not, but like it feels better than 5 dice. Dice fixing is cool. And then Fury's attacks are all insane. He has the potential to, if you have 5 power starting your turn, if you have 6 power starting your turn,
and your grunts.
Yeah, and your grunts. You're dropping 2 grunt attacks, 2 more grunt attacks, and 2 7-die attacks. And even if you're not doing that, you have 5 die with Pierce. With or without rerolls, that's still pretty good. That's a Proxima builder. That's an X23 no reroll builder. That's a Wolverine builder. And you can do it at range 3.
Yeah. No, I like his output. I like his output. I'm just concerned that he's a little more fragile than he's getting credit for.
Oh, he's not a tank at all. He's Dr. Octopus defensively. So
outside of the Shield affiliation, which I don't think is even his best home, I think that so one of the things that I was telling some of my local guys was with Thanos, right? So my approach with Thanos was to tell them if Thanos is the problem, then Thanos is the priority, right? So same thing with Fury. If he's the problem, when you look at the table and you look at the board and you look at your chances to win, if Fury's the problem, then he's the priority. Right. And so just get him off the table, then the grunts are gone. You don't have to worry about any more, core rules breaking. We're just going to take out Fury and go. And if that can happen on a fast enough timeline that they're not going to have enough points advantage or they don't have enough models left to win, right? Because they're, tabled or otherwise can't score, then, I mean, that's where I'm talking about staying power. It's not so much output. It's in keeping him on the table and keeping him alive, keeping him healthy enough to score points.
That's why I like him as a splash, because if they're dedicating attacks to Fury, well, you were just talking about Thanos, right? If Thanos is the problem, kill Thanos. what if you're playing both Fury and Thanos? Ooh.
Yeah, no spoilers for my list on Sunday.
Yeah, of course not. But he's in my Black Order list right now, and I think Black Order is actually one of the stronger places to bring Fury because he lets you like kind of like cursed go wide in a way, because you're gonna have enough models that you don't feel super behind. You can still pick up extracts and such, and you're still also bringing like Thanos and Corvus or something like that.
Right. And they're not going after those. So sure, exactly. If you've got, if you can, that's threat saturation, right? That's the term that I've used for that in the past, coming from Legion. It was like, all right, if you brought operative Luke, you needed enough threat saturation in the rest of your team to make it so that Luke was going to get something done.
Yeah, you make everything scary for sure.
Right. So if everything's scary for sure, then who's the real problem? And now we're talking about that becomes more of a player skill question then at that point, or at least a player experience level, right? So that you have to know what the actual problem is on the table at that point. I'll give you that. Sure.
Yeah. I played Shield once and I lost that game. So I've mainly played Fury in Black Order, and I just use him whenever I get an annoying expert on this side of the table. Right. But I think he's best as a splash, and I think he's best when he's not the scariest thing on the table. I think I'm lying. I played him in Mystique Brotherhood, and he was really good there too, because I had a Juggernaut running around that they were trying to get rid of as well. But yeah, I think Shield is kind of weird, and you definitely need to have either a support system of bodyguards or like something else that is way more attention grabbing than Fury. So he'll just kind of quietly kill everything on the board.
Fair.
Oh, and Eye in the Sky is insane.
All right, I'll buy your pen. All right, do you like Eye in the Sky with Fury Splash? Do you like a once a game Eye in the Sky?
I think I was really high on Reposition when I first played it, but I think Reposition is kind of like, it's very similar to a lot of like turn one herb scores and like things like that.
It's gimmicky.
It's gimmicky. It's only ever going to be successful if your opponent hasn't seen it before. And I don't personally like to win that way. I don't want to just like trick someone. I want them to know what's going on and lose anyway, because I'm better than them or whatever, right? Or that sounds like really, really elitist and douchey.
No, but it's better than gotcha.
Yeah, it's better than gotcha. But Eye in the Sky, like it's a card that gives you Spider-Gwen once again. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, it's not even just that, but it's like it's not directly towards anybody. It's omnidirectional Spider-Gwen.
It's just finding the spot.
Yeah, but I will say, because I was a big proponent of Reposition over Eye before, but like the more I thought about it and the more I've done things, is I think Eye is actually just more money, because Reposition, it's gimmicky. The only person you're saving is Fury, where Eye in the Sky, you could be saving Fury, you could be saving Thanos, you could be saving whoever you want in your roster, whoever needs to be saved. And I think that's worth a tactics card slot if you're bringing Fury, because it's going to give you that staying power.
Also a fantastic tech piece against things like not Ricochet Blast, but like any of the shield throws or Helios laser bombardment, because Helios, I'm pretty sure that's how this interaction works. I know it's how it works with like Spider-Gwen and Escort to Safety, but if you move out of line of sight, even though Helios initially gets rid of line of sight, those abilities all say if you move to if you're using the save thingy and you save them outside of the range or line of sight, they're fine. So you can Eye in the Sky someone behind a building, and even if but Helios ignores line of sight, well, my card, which came after, is on top of the stack, says I don't care. You can just kill that card. It's a really, really good tech piece.
Can agree. All right, I think we're good on meta. Move on and start wrapping things up. Okay, cool. All right, sales pitch of the week. I think it's my turn. So this will be a fun one. I'm trying to get it short and sweet and actually an elevator pitch. I'm going to talk about Colossus. Number one. Number one. I will say I would not probably splash Colossus anywhere outside of affiliation. I will say that's probably a terrible thing to start a sales pitch off with, but it's super hard to argue that. So I'm just gonna get that out of the way right now. In affiliations that he's in, however, though, I think he's great. Brotherhood. Yeah, like he's contesting with Rogue, and and that's a very hard competition slot. But I also think he has some good game playing underneath Mystique, because she wants to run she has the ability to run a little bit wider, and I think he might actually help Mystique more than Rogue does for the aspect of staying power, because she's more of a hare, but she plays like a turtle. when we go back to relating like that. So she needs something to help stay around, which Colossus is good at that. And she, like, not necessarily gives him power, but she can also make him do an extract, which makes Colossus relevant. And keep power on him, pick up an extract, get the power back, and it's making him relevant to make somebody want to attack him, which gets his power train rolling. It makes him more relevant the rest of the game. That's my argument for Colossus and Brotherhood, is under Mystique, give it a shot. It's really fun. Number 2, let's talk X-Force real quick. X-Force, I think, is very interesting with Colossus just because I always thought X-Force had this big issue of that staying power. They never really had anything that, like, let them stay around. They just would, like, come out of the gate swinging super, super hard, just high attrition, super dicey, kill. But after, like, round 2, it just fizzled out. People start dying. You start losing your models. You start losing your action economy. You just start failing because you don't have that push power no more. And my big thought when he came out was, this is what we needed. This is going to be the thing that keeps X-Force in the game because he can protect the people. And had really big issues with that, only because nobody would attack Colossus. So, again, this all comes back to just making him relevant. And then X-Men, giving him a hop, make him relevant. He's good there. Just trust me. So, the reason why I think Colossus is actually good is there's a lot of attrition stuff running around right now. And Colossus just eats hits. Like, he just does not die. Like, does not die. I played a game. I played many games with him. I've been forcing him almost every single game, and it's been rather interesting to play him a lot more. And I'd actually highly recommend if somebody's playing X-Force or Brotherhood or X-Men, just give him a shot. Try him out. He's super fun to play. I'd highly recommend your first round is going to just be double short move into the middle and pick something up and be relevant. If you can make him relevant, his game is 100 times better because he's actually able to bodyguard. He's able to boost his defenses. And his spender is amazing. A 3-cost spender to wild stagger somebody and auto stun. Like, that's pretty big in my opinion. Also, it has a chance to kill them, so it happens. So X-Slam is like one of the coolest things on this card. Yes, it's sad because he can't, like, impact character displacement at all. It's a little sad, but, like, he almost doesn't need it because, like, if he was doing that as well, he wouldn't have power to do what he's there to do, and that's to bodyguard and take hits. Colossus is also really good counter Black Order. He just laughs at Corvus trying to hit him. Like, Corvus goes in, hits him. Oh, I've got 12 hits. That's cool. I got 8 blocks. Like, and it happens though, especially in X-Force. You get cable boost going on and his own boost. You're rolling 8 dice, like, in Vuln 1 for defenses. Like, he just survives. I played a game where a Thanos, Corvus, and Proxima had to send all their attacks into Colossus, and he didn't die over the course of 1 round. He's so hard to take out if the situation does it. And then Full Metal here saying extreme conditioning for the win. I'd agree with that. Like, if you want a way to, like, make him be able to move and punch something or make actions round 1 or later in, be able to reposition him because somebody threw him, extreme conditioning is really good. I do think that it's very nice to take a movement card in your tactics if you are playing Colossus, because it's sad when somebody throws him and then he's just like, I need to spend my turn getting back in. But it's almost worth it, because if you think about it, if my opponent is throwing Colossus or Cosmic Portaling Colossus out, okay, so they just wasted, like, one of their best things in the game on something that people consider bad. Like, isn't that super good? Like, I'd much rather you Cosmic Portal Colossus out than Cosmic Portal 23 away. Like, if you think about it that way. So in that point, he's almost earning his threat by being, like, this big distraction that, like, I don't want you to be able to get your bodyguard off, so I'm going to waste my biggest impact of the board state on somebody who I say is a bad model. Tell me how that makes sense. Like, like, you know what I mean? Like, but that's probably my biggest thing is make him relevant, take a movement card with him, and just play with him. Don't listen to what people say. Colossus is fine. He's fun to play with. He's super fun to play with, and his model has grown on me. I hated the Sentinel arm at first, but I've seen a lot of really cool reposes, but I think his model is actually really cool. My biggest issue with the model is I don't see Colossus as a gloating person. He's a very humble person in the comics. He doesn't gloat, and modeling him, basically showing the scene off of a trophy, does not characterize the character, in my opinion. That's like my only issue with the model.
No, he's getting ready to throw it at another one.
Yeah, we'll go with that. I like
used
how
a Thanos arm for mine.
It's
a little large, so it's like Cockknocker Colossus.
Oh, nice.
That's good. That's good. He's got a big hand.
Codes.
I gotta say real quick though, I like how you and I have worn a Marvel shirt every single episode. I'm pretty sure. It's always a
Batman shirt. Sorry,
get out. All right, but there's my sales pitch on Colossus. Try him out. Just give him a shot. Don't listen to people say he's better than he's let on. He's a super secret sleeper. Also, I know the Zoom calls running out of time, so I'm gonna try and say this really, really quickly. The biggest secret to playing Colossus is you sit down across from somebody ready to play them. You drop Colossus in their list, like, oh, what does he do? I haven't seen Colossus in a while. Like, I've heard he's bad. And you say, no, man, he dazed 3 characters last game I played. He bodyguarded so much damage. And then all of a sudden, Colossus is extremely relevant to them, and they have to take him out as soon as possible. And it just makes it so much worse because they're that's my secret tech to playing Colossus. All right. Sales pick of the week. That's done. I'm not going to do the hobby corner. We can kind of just pass on. Everybody, come check out. Well, join.
We have 2 minutes. So I want to before we leave. We have the challenge of the week.
Yes,
Neek, you win this one. You have dice boosting and Black Bolt. I think that's what I want to do with Inhumans. Clap. Nice. Also, you're playing Miss Marvel.
It looks cool.
It looks super cool. You got Smash in there too, and you have your biggest character is like Lockjaw, and I think Ronan. No, just Lockjaw. Dude, that's king shit. Let's go. I guess Miss Marvel, actually, she could transform and then smash something and start blowing people up. I like that a lot.
Cool. I'm gonna try this out because I've been wanting to play Inhumans, so I'm gonna give it a shot too. Finger Guns, you have challenge of the week for this next one. What you got?
Challenge of the week. I'd like to see your best Cabal rosters. Bonus points for playing them at 14, 15, 16. I want to see some Cabal resurgence. There's things out there.
And then we have one listener question. Well, I guess there was 2. Let's see what we have time for. Where to go? My notes. From Omnis, which character do you find yourself putting into most rosters? Real quick, for me, Bucky. Okay, for me it's Colossus and Wolverine, like because to me they go together. They're a pair, and I've just been trying to get as many games with them as possible lately. Hyper Viper, what you got?
Bucky's a really good answer. I was thinking something else, but no, it's pretty true. He actually he overperforms every time I play him, with or without Blind Obsession. I have a tough time not slotting Bucky and Blind Obsession every game.
All right. Just those dice. He just those dice.
So good.
Okay, well that's gonna wrap us up. Let's hit the button and see if we have time. All right. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Maximum effort.
In this war, there's no surrender.
He's out of line, but he's right. Who the hell is Bucky? You don't like a fair fight.
I think you're wrong. Which part? All of it.
Think you're the only superhero in the world?
Touche.
You still have time, apparently. Oh, cool. All right. Yeah, thanks for watching. Oh, there it goes. Of course, I was about to say it.
I love the close. It's just gone.
Yeah, I was just about to say the whole "we are the rogue agency, you are the listener" bit, and it just stopped right in the middle.